You gotta handle the rock with flair and rhythm if you wanna be judged on wood grain and concrete courts in New York. This ain't no nickel and dime. It's dribbling dimes where scoring never looked this good. I guarantee it. But was your reputation built from the playground up? Or did you call next and they took that ish? Or cause you weren't as fast as police and ambulance sirens? Or as loud as Mr. Softy Ice Cream? No. You see, this is New York City hoops in prime time. As beautiful as the skyline, it's dribbling dimes.
Yankee Stadium's lights turned the attention of passerbys onto his neighborhood court. Crowds would form, and from there, our guest and his boys would put on a show to hear them cheer. From these humble beginnings, this Puerto Rican kid started to generate a buzz that, with the inspiration of Gary Massey, helped him build a solid career as a player at St. Raymond High School. From there, he went on to play at Monmouth College and later joined the NCAA coaching ranks as both a head and assistant coach for schools like Memphis. He was an assistant on Calipari's bench on the juggernaut Memphis Tigers squad that featured Derrick Rose and Chris Douglas Roberts. Today, he's an assistant to Coach Frank Martin on South Carolina's men's team. Rock with us as we take you through the basketball story of Jose Chucky Martin.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Yo, what up? This is Manny Digital.
This is Emilio the Poet.
And with us today, we've got, not only is he a St. Raymond alum, not only is he a Monmouth alum, but he's also the assistant coach currently at South Carolina Gamecocks, as well, for those of you that can see this, Mr. Chucky Martin.
Yeah. I'm happy to be back home. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, Bronx, New York's own. Yes.
I'm excited.
You might not be able to tell because he's refined his demeanor and his speech. He's well-traveled.
Yeah, I've got a good friend here at St. Raymond's who helped me years ago, Jim Sturgis.
Yeah.
I was a young teacher here, and he kind of guided me through, and I'm the final product because of Jim.
Yeah,
part of it for sure.
That's the man. That's
That's
yeah.
nice,
So Chuck, I know we just happened to have you in city New York, so
yeah.
Thank you for making a detour and stopping by here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to start because you were at St. Raymond teaching. I want to say when I was here. I don't think you were my teacher or anything like that. But how long as a teacher did you spend here at St. Raymond, and in what capacity?
I was here for 4 years teaching.
Okay.
And prior to that, I was at LaSalle Academy down in the village, Lower East Side, on 2nd Avenue and 2nd Street.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I taught there for 3 years, taught here for 4 years. And really what happened was I was living maybe like 4 blocks from here.
Okay.
In
Parkchester?
Yeah, in that area. And the commute was tough. You know, I was driving in. I was young, and I wasn't making any money.
Time out. Back up. You were driving into the city.
I was driving into the city.
Because you thought you was hot shit back
then? Yeah, because I was young. Yes, that's exactly right. Because I got a new car, and I thought I was cool.
Okay, there's no logical reason why you got to bring a car to the city.
So I'm driving in, and shortly after 2 or 3 trips in the city, you realize there's no parking. And if there is parking, they're going to charge you $50. So I did it for 3 years, and then there was an opportunity to teach here.
Okay.
And it was like, man, I can walk to work,
right,
and I can walk home. And then, after 3 years, there were really 3 good years at LaSalle Academy. I learned a lot, met some really good people. And then, but the opportunity to come back home to St. Raymond's, where I went to school, was great.
Yeah.
So the minute they said there's an opportunity, I jumped all over it.
So were you only teaching, or were you also into basketball coaching and doing other things?
No, at LaSalle Academy, I was teaching, but also coaching the freshman team.
Okay.
And I had a homeroom, and I was teaching 2 global history classes, a business math class, and at that time, I had 2 young players who were eventually turned out to be really good, and one in my homeroom, and one in my one of my classes.
Okay.
My business math class, I had a guy by the name of Shamgard Wells, who was iconic New York City point guard now.
Yes, sir.
And then in my other class, I had a kid who you could tell he was going to be good. You just didn't realize how good at the time. A guy who's now met a world peace, but back then he was on our tests.
Word?
Wow.
Yeah. So those 2 guys.
That's right. Yeah, he did go to LaSalle.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a freshman in my in my homeroom class, and Shamgod was in my business math class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But you saw the potential in both those players at the time.
Well,
You
yeah,
knew
for
there was
sure.
something.
Sham was kind of established at the time.
Okay.
You could tell he was one of the better guards in the city. He was on the verge of becoming a McDonald's All-American.
Right.
And then in the morning, I would work him out. I was still young. I was in my 20s. I just graduated from Monmouth. So I could still mess around a little bit. So in the morning, him and I would go in there, and we would work for like 40 minutes before the bell rang.
Nice.
And then he would go to class. I would go to class. But then Ron Artest was completely different. Bill Aber at the time was the head coach, and he was real generous with me. And he says, "Hey, man, we'd love to have you be a part of the program, maybe teach, maybe coach the freshman team." So great. So at the time, I had a guy named Michael, man, I can't think of his last name, but Mike, who just retired from LaSalle. It's amazing.
Oh, wow.
He was my assistant, and he was a really good dude, and he just wanted to be a part of it. And so we're having tryouts, and we got this kid, Ron Artest. He's on the team.
Freshman year.
Freshman year.
Yep.
So like a week into it, I remember grabbing Mike, and I said, Mike, come here for a minute. He said, "What's up, Chuck?" I said, "Man, I don't know about the kid Ron Artest, man." And he immediately like reacted thinking that I was saying something negative. He's like, no, I'm telling you, Chuck, he's great. This guy's unbelievable. Look how big he is, how strong he is. I said, no, Mike, I'm saying to you, we won't keep him. We're not going to have him. He's like, no, the kid wants to be here. I said, Mike, he's going to be on the varsity.
Right.
I said, there's no way we're keeping that kid. So like a week later, Billy Aber, he's again another legendary New York City coach. He calls me up and Chuck, I need to speak to you, man. Come to my office. So I come up, and he's really to the point, real stoic. If anyone knows Billy Aber, he's like, "Hey, man, I'm happy you're here. That's awesome. Ron Artest will no longer play with you. He'll be on our team." And then that was it. He was like, "All right, now get out."
So you weren't devastated because you already knew.
I kind of knew. I saw it.
Down.
He's 6'5". He's like 100 and he's a freshman. He's like 180. He's bigger than me, like physically bigger than me. And so you could see like the way he moves. He was a little stiff, but he played hard and he got to the rim. And I'm like, there's no way that kid's staying on the freshman team.
Wow.
And sure enough, Billy moved him up. And then I want to say between Ron and Shamgod, they won the city championship. And I think, don't quote me, but I think they had a run at the state championship.
Wow.
If not, I think they won it that year.
Don't you worry, we don't fact check.
Yeah,
good.
You
Good.
good.
That's
You
gospel.
Fake
They
news.
champions.
Fake news.
Fake news.
That's running the world via social
Fake
media.
news. All right, so I'll throw it out there. I think they won a state championship.
Hey, I have a question because this is a very intriguing thing that you revealed. My question is, what kind of people were these gentlemen? Like what? Like we get to know them as a basketball player. Like what? Like I know they were young, but still, like I like to appreciate it from a very personal.
Yeah,
what did you see?
Sham was like unbelievably confident, but not arrogant, which was really, really interesting. Some kids are arrogant, and they don't know that they don't know.
Right.
So then they make mistakes, and they just they make mistakes in their personal lives. They make mistakes on the court, in the classroom. Sham was different. He was intelligent, or he is intelligent. He was intelligent back there then with me, and he was confident but never arrogant. Like he never came across like I'm better than you or I know more than you, but
I'm gonna bust your ass.
But I'm gonna bust your ass, and you're not better than me.
Right.
And he just had a confidence to him, and if he felt like you can help him, he was always like, "Hey, come work with me," and that always stuck in my mind. He was a good kid and just super confident. And there were other kids who had false bravado. And they mistaken bravado and arrogance for confidence. And it was like those guys didn't warrant that because they weren't that good.
Right.
But Sham, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was confident. He did not have false bravado. And he was intelligent. And he worked at it. So he knew that I've been working Monday through Thursday. So I'm going to play well Friday because I put the work into it.
Right.
And then Ron was really interesting. Ron was like super smart. He was on an honor roll. My best story about Ron Artest back then was we would play pickup after school, and he's a freshman, so the varsity team was pretty good, and he just wouldn't get picked as one of the 10 guys. No one really knew who he was. It was only the first 2 weeks.
Right.
You could tell he's pretty good, but he's not as good as these guys.
Right.
And so he would sit in the corner, and he would do his homework between games.
Okay.
So one day, the way I found out was one day I kind of realized like this is the third consecutive day when we dismiss him that everyone grabs their backpacks except for him. So I'm like, "Ron, where's your backpack? Where your books?" He says, "I don't have them in my locker." I said, "Well, you gotta was your homework? He says, oh, coach, I'm done. I did it. So, you're a teacher and you're like, there's no way this guy did his homework because he's been here with me all day.
Right.
And then I said, all right, no problem. So I just kind of quietly accepted his answer, but I kept observing him every week. And what he would do is he would never get picked the first 2 games. And what he would do is he'd be in the corner. You could see him
banging it out.
He's writing, he's doing all his homework. And then he would play, and if he lost, he'd go back. He's writing it out. And for those 2 hours, he would do all his homework.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? Ron is okay.
Wow.
Most people don't know that about mental world peace.
I wouldn't have assumed that.
Yeah.
And I met him one time, and after I met him, it was after his pro career had ended.
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, okay, now this is a different kind of person, because the persona that you got from him, especially unfortunately with the Malice of the Palace, that stamped like a certain stereotype that you have of him. Right. There is an intelligence about him, and there is hard work outside of just ball that you can see bleed out, but it wasn't the case necessarily when you see him on TV. Yeah. So that's very interesting.
No, he was great. He was, what he was? He wasn't superficial. My other story about him was I was at St. John's at the time as an assistant. So this is, you fast forward like 10 years now, and I'm an assistant in the Big East, and then he's, at this point, he's established himself in the NBA, and he's maybe in his 5th year in the NBA, and he's doing great, and he's on his 2nd or 3rd contract, whatever. And he comes home, and the manager says, hey, Ron Artest is downstairs. Oh, great, bring him up, set him up. Hey, Ron, what's up, man? Give him a hug. And he came in, he just had some regular shorts and just like a regular T-shirt. Like nowadays, the kids have like the dry fit.
Right.
The gear is important. Right. And he didn't look the part. He just had like,
regular stuff.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, coach, I want to work out. Yeah, great. Come on, let's work out. I'm going to bring you St. John's gear. He said, I just need socks. So, all right, whatever. So we brought him socks, but we also brought him like St. John's gear. And he was like real adamant about like, oh, man, that's cool, man. I appreciate it. I just need socks. And really, he was just like about the work. He's like, thank you for the gear. I just need socks because I already got a shirt. It doesn't have to be a fancy shirt.
Right.
I got shorts. They're not the nicest, but they're mine.
Right.
And at the time, he's making like $10 million. So
I'm gonna argue with this guy.
But he's like, you know what? I just need some socks. He put some socks on, and then at the time, we had a brand new practice facility, and our offices overlooked the practice facility, so you can look down on him, and you can see him just like working, him and like 2 other guys on just fundamentals: catch, square up, shoot, shot, fake one, dribble, and then he go in the weight room and lift for like 40 minutes, go back on the court, go back in the weight room.
Wow.
So, you learned a lot about Ron and why he's been able to not only, make it to the NBA, but the reason why other teams and other players want to play with him. Now, you don't necessarily want to play against him
for sure,
because he had a motor, he's got a toughness to him.
Yeah.
But everyone in the league said, man, if we can trade for Ron Artest, if we can get Ron Artest, to Kobe Bryant's point, like, we got to get that guy because really he's committed.
Yeah.
He's not superficial with the gear.
Right.
Like, I want my fair share because it is professional sports.
Well, he's making $10 million.
He's making
nothing to argue there.
But he didn't roll up in a Mercedes, or it was just like, hey man, I'm here. And I think he took pride in shocking people that way. I think he enjoyed jumping out of a Honda Accord or something, and it's like, what are you doing?
Super unexpected.
Yeah, I think he enjoyed that. He enjoyed that process. So I think that makes him unique. He's different that way.
You know what? Let me tell you, like, this is a real pleasure of doing this show, this podcast, because we get to see the grit, what happens beyond. Like with we get to all see them play ball. We get to see the stories unfold before us on television, but. It's that background. It's that what got them there. Because for me, like, you don't just come up from nothing. Like the Shamgod and Artest, they have a story. What was it? What does that set them apart? Yeah. Because we have a lot of talented people, but they put in the work.
They put in the work, man.
That's a really, really thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
man.
It's one of those stories. Both of those guys. That you want to share, but you don't often have the platform to share it.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
So it's ironic that I'm doing this because I love those stories about those 2 guys.
Wow. So selfishly, my brother and I, and I'm going to say this, we say it every now and again, but like that's one of the main reasons why we're doing this. Because you hear sometimes through like 5th, 6th, 7th 10th parties,
Right.
these stories. And you know how the telephone game works, right?
Yeah.
Like, by the time it hits you, it went from Joe Blow to Michael Jordan.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, you can't really call what happened.
Right.
So I feel like, especially here in the Tri-State, like, there's so many of these things. And you have so many notable names that come out. But there's also a treasure trove of other people that might have played with these big elite people or had their own legacy established that you don't hear a ton about.
Yeah.
So, like, having it from all these different vantage points is, like, gold to us. Like, that's the kind of shit I'm just like,
Yeah,
man.
It's funny because if I didn't do this podcast with you guys, like most people would not affiliate me with Sham God. Or
Of
Ron
course
Artest.
not.
Right.
Of
They
course
just wouldn't
not.
know that we interacted
Of course
or
not.
cross our paths.
For
to
sure.
this day, I speak to Sham.
that's
Really?
dope.
To this day, I talk to him. He calls me. He's with the Mavericks.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the NBA, he's
Right.
like their skill development guy.
Yep.
But
That's
to this
so
day, I
cool.
talk to him maybe once a month. We have a really
that's
good relationship. Yeah,
That's
Sham is the
dope.
best.
That listen, we both grew up, idolizing Sham God. Every street person on earth was trying to everybody. You know what I mean? For us, especially in the street ball game or just like the random park, he's iconic.
Yeah,
you know
no
what
doubt.
I mean? So, but like to know of his modesty, to know of his humility, to know of him like just
He's one of the best guys I
yo,
know.
I've
man.
seen people that are not worth the spit. You know what I mean?
He's a good dude,
and
man.
think they the man.
Yes.
And for that that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Man. Shout out to Sham God. I hope he
I
hits
got
you
one
someday.
question.
No doubt.
Was he hitting people with the Sham God when he was working with you for a little bit?
I'm gonna tell you what's funny, right? Like this is the young coach in me, and really this is how brilliant he was at that time. He would do some of that stuff, and hopefully if he ever watches this, thanks for not listening to me. I would say to him like, you can't do that. That's not fundamentally sound.
Right.
And he would just kind of like, yeah, sure you can. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. You got to go, right to left crossover or left to right crossover, because if you throw it out there, you're going to expose it. And he would just look at me and be like, no, you can do that, because his mind saw angles and saw the game in a way that the normal guy couldn't see it.
Couldn't see it, yeah.
And then what happens is when you interact with a guy that's brilliant in the way he was at that moment, it's hard to understand his
frame of mind.
And how good he is, because you're so used to, hey, left to right, right to left,
Right.
and then he comes with this unbelievable perspective, this unbelievable angle, and then really it was like throwing a curveball for the first time, right?
Yes.
When people play baseball, you're used to for 100 years just throw it, and then this one guy says you can do this to it,
Right.
and it's like, how did you do that?
Right.
And then it's like, do it again, and it's like, yo, did you see him do that?
Right.
That's kind of what Sham did. It was like he went right to left, left to right, and then he said, no, you can do this. You can throw it and get him leaning, and you can pull it back.
Wow.
And it's like, do that again. Let me see that. So
To this day, I mean, that's one of the most brilliant moves. Like,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
if you could
That's
execute
incredible.
that properly, oof.
Oh, it's incredible. And the fact that he was able to do that, like in real games in high school, and then able to do it in the NCAA in the tournament, like it was unbelievable that he was able to pull that off.
I remember, like, even before he joined the NBA, he was the talk of the league. He was like, people were trying to emulate his moves,
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, Sham God has his footprint all over these people.
No
because
question.
He's like renowned in that sense. Like his
Yeah.
name trumps. Okay, for me, he's got to be. What do you rank him in terms of handle? He got to be like one of the top three handles
three?
of all time.
I mean,
Period.
top three.
I don't even know. Like, I'm
He's pretty
thinking
good.
Tim Hardaway,
Yeah.
but like Sham God is right there with his hand.
Yeah, no,
Right?
he's tremendous.
He's
Yeah.
sick. So Chuck, thank you for that story.
Yeah,
I know we
yeah.
spent a lot of time on that, but there's a lot more to get
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Definitely.
So you, obviously, you came to St. Raymond. When was it in your life? When was it that basketball became a significant piece of who you are?
I grew up in the Bronx, South Bronx, by Yankee Stadium, and when I was younger, it was so different than it is today. Today you got AAU ball, and kids play indoor, and you got trainers and specialized sneakers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Back then, I know I sound like an old dude, but like you just went outside and played. So one of the things that attracted me to playing was, every time the Yankees played at home, because I lived like 4 blocks away, and they played at night. They usually play like a 7:05. And then the sun's going down. What happens is the Yankee lights would light up the courts.
Oh, yep.
So we found out if you get there around 5:45 and start playing, you would have this crowd, because they're just going to the game. But then they would see these kids playing, and some of them having a few drinks, some of them hanging out. So then they would just kind of hang out before they go in the game. And then what we realized is we got a crowd.
You got an audience.
You got an audience. So you make a move, you're just hooping, and then you hear the reaction.
Whoa,
and you're like, ooh, that was cool. It's like, I want to do that again. So you go through your legs. And back then, one rim was always smaller than the other or shorter. So one rim was 7.5 feet, the other one was 9. So you can get there and dunk one. And then you hear the reaction, and you felt something. He's like, ooh, I like how that feels. And then that got me involved. And then I said, I like playing basketball. This is fun. And then there was a guy here when I was in 8th grade at Sacred Heart Middle School named Gary Massey, who went on to play at Villanova, who became Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East. And a guy that played with him was Michael McCarthy, if I'm not mistaken, and Ray Echoes and Fred and Lucky Mack, all these guys. And someone brought me to a St. Raymond's game, and I saw Gary Massey lob dunk. And I was like, I want to do that. I don't know if I can do that, but I want to do that. And that was really the first time I fell in love with like St. Raymond's. I saw the uniforms, the orange and blue, and there was a passion here. And I lived, again, across town.
Yeah.
So really the school to go to in my neighborhood was Cardinal Hayes,
right.
O'Hallows, who they were really good at the time. And St. Raymond's wasn't quite there yet. And Gary and Mike and those guys didn't get the credit and still don't get the credit that they deserve. But St. Raymond's at the time wasn't the cool school yet.
Right.
It was Powell Memorial, it was Talentine, Cardinal Hayes, O'Hallows. So Gary didn't get the attention, but I remember coming to a game and I saw that and I was like, I want to be there. I want to go play at St. Raymond's.
So who was your coach?
My
here?
coach when I got here was Gary DeCesar.
It was, okay.
So I played for Gary, and then Gary had myself, Mike Thompson, Eddie Rivera, Darryl Reed. So Darryl Reed was like the guy, the sophomore on that varsity team with Gary Massey. And he was like the talk of the town. He was like a 6'2", stocky, strong guard, could stroke it. Really, he's one of the all-time greats here, and people don't realize how good he was. And most people affiliate me with Eddie Rivera.
Okay.
We were 2 Spanish kids.
Right.
At the time, there weren't a lot of Spanish kids playing, and we had a good chemistry. And then that chemistry grew throughout the city, and it was like, man, there's 2 Spanish kids at St. Raymond's who were pretty good in the backcourt. And then that thing, it's amazing because of all the things I've done, Final Four, National Championship game, all that stuff, I think most people from New York affiliate me with Eddie Rivera and St. Raymond's.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So how odd was it? I mean, you mentioned that was the storyline, like all the Spanish kids.
Yeah.
How rare was it to have good Latino basketball players in your era, in high school ball here?
Yeah, there weren't many. It was me, Eddie Rivera, and there was a kid named Danny Torrado.
That name, was he at St. Raymond too?
No, he was at a school.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was at a school, Our Savior
Lutheran. Okay.
And Danny Torrado was this 5'10" electric little point guard. And he, in today's day and age with social media, he would be having videos. He was throwing the ball behind his back to his legs. He was wraparound passes.
Was he a street baller too?
Yeah.
That's why I know his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Danny was tremendous, and then it was me and Eddie Rivera. That was it. There was no other like Puerto Rican, Dominican. There were no other kids in New York City that played. And now we got good at the right time, and we were able to showcase our talent because we played against Talentine, who was really good, Malik Sealy and those guys. So when you played well against them, it was like, yo, he's got to be pretty good.
Right.
You played well against Kenny Anderson, it was like, oh, he's got to be pretty good. And then Christ the King was loaded. Jamal Faulkner, Jason Williams, all these guys. So the league was so good that at the time we weren't household names in New York, but by the end of the season we started to build a little name because there were so many opportunities. So it was like, man, you see the kids at St. Raymond's, they beat whoever. And Eddie had 15 and Chuck had 15. So then the word got out, like, those kids aren't bad, man.
So were you guys, I mean, by the time maybe junior, when did you move up to varsity?
I moved up as a sophomore.
Sophomore.
So as a sophomore, I was on the varsity with Michael Thompson, who him and Darryl Reed were like our anchors.
Okay.
And Darryl Reed was like a high-level guard, and then Mike Thompson was this super athletic 6'4" wing, and then Eddie Rivera was like an underrated point guard, like ridiculous how good he was. So, and then I was a part of that, and I was just kind of a piece to that. I was energetic. I had a little bounce to me. I can get to the rim a little bit, and it was just a chemistry. There was a synergy between all of us. And Eddie and I would ride the subway every day because he would get on the 6 train 3 stops after I was already on.
Okay.
So there was no phones. So back then we would always
just coordinate. You know what time you had to be there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be on the 7:30 train.
Right.
Jump on the 5th cart.
Right.
Nice.
Cool. So
Damn, I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow, New York, yo, that's how you did it,
Yeah,
right?
there was no phones. So I was like, yo,
dope.
Ed, I'm gonna be on the 7:30, which for you would mean the 7:45.
Right.
It's 15 minutes later.
Right.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 6th cart, jump in, and then doors open up. Yo, come in.
That's dope, man.
So that's how we connected. So that chemistry every morning and on the way back after practice for 30 minutes allowed us to grow. And it allowed us to hang out and spend time together. And then, it reflected on the court.
I just want to say for all the young viewers out there or listeners, man, there was life before cell phones
There
and social
was.
media.
I'm proof.
It's hard to believe.
That was an example of that.
Yeah.
I have a question of that. And so my thing is, like, you mentioned a lot of powerhouses back then.
Yeah.
And you guys weren't known yet, even though you were making your grounds.
Yeah.
What team, if at all, stood out to you as far as, like, the greatest competition? Like, damn, I didn't want to play those guys because it was
When I was at St. Raymond's?
Yes.
There was so many good teams, man, because remember, back then, prep schools didn't really exist.
Weren't popular,
Right.
So, like, every kid from New York stayed home. So,
Right.
like, you had Kenny Anderson on one team,
Wow.
Ralph James on one team,
Wow.
or Dan on one team. Like, you had 2 pros at Malloy.
Wow.
And then you had Malik Sealy, Adrian Autry, Brian Reese at Talentine. And then,
It must have been a nightmare to play. Every game was like
it was awesome. And then, the team.
You were coming up when Power Memorial shut down, and in that transitional period, right?
Power Memorial indirectly helped St. Raymond's. Because
Really?
what happens is the kids that when the school shut down, all the kids at Power, they're looking around. Where am I
Right.
going to go to school? And a handful of them came here.
wow.
So that kind of they added to Gary and Mike McCarthy.
God.
Wow.
So then that allowed them to kind of elevate.
And that was a little bit of a cheat code there.
Yeah,
Look at that.
We'll take it.
Shout
we'll
out to
take it.
Power Memorial,
Yes,
man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when those guys shut down, some of those kids came here.
Wow.
So then, there's a buzz, right? Like, hey, this kid's going to St. Raymond's.
Right.
And then Gary Massey and those guys were really the unsung heroes of St. Raymond's basketball because they weren't quite there yet.
Yeah.
And my group, I think, is the group that connected Gary's group, the pass, to the next group after us that took off, which was Terrence Rencher, Orlando Antigua. That group took off.
Right.
And then at that point, it became a national program.
Right.
And then here comes Kareem Reed and Eric Harris. And then here comes Ernest Brown, Avon Hunter, and Majestic Map, Julius Hodge. Now the thing is like national.
Right.
So I think our group was the group that kind of locally, at least in New York, was like St. Raymond's is a cool place to go.
Oh, I see.
Chuck Martin and Eddie Rivera, those dudes are cool.
God.
Right.
Gary Massey was already good, but no one really recognized him because it wasn't
Not
a
the
cool place.
school.
It wasn't a school yet.
Right.
So by us coming there, it shined a light on Gary, ironically.
That's
because he was better than everybody.
Right.
But
he wasn't getting his just due.
He wasn't
'cause-
getting his just due.
Right.
And then as we became successful, and then Terrence Wrench and those guys became successful, it shined a light on Gary Massey. Like, yo, this guy's Big East player of Defensive Player of the Year. Where's he from? He's from St. Raymond's. He's one of ours. And it's like, oh, wow. And then he ironically got his due after he played.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
So you approaching your senior year, you guys were buzzing. Things were different than when you started out at St. Raymond, basketball wise.
Yeah.
When was it that things kind of tipped in your favor as far as like college recruitment goes? Like, was that early or when did that occur?
I think, again, in my sophomore year, we had so many opportunities to play against good competition. So if you struck out once, struck out twice, struck out 3 times, for lack of a better term, baseball terminology, like you knew that if you didn't play well against Christ the King, that's okay. You're going to play Malloy. You got Kenny Anderson.
Oh, because there was just so many good teams.
So you didn't play well against Kenny Anderson, you're going to play. You got Jason Williams. You got Christ the King. If you didn't play well against him, you got Brian Reese and Malik Sealy. So you kept having opportunities. So for me, my sophomore year, I had 1 or 2 games where like people came to see other people. And one of those games was at Christ the King when they came to see Jamal Faulkner, who was a tremendous player, and Carlos Easterling and all these guys, Carl Beckett. What's my man's name? He's a guard, Khalid Reeds, who went to Arizona, who played like 10 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
All those guys came to see those guys. And
Wow.
on that particular night, we lost, but I had like 36.
Oof.
So then that night, it was like, okay, this young kid's not bad. And I probably wasn't as good as that night,
Yeah.
but I was okay. And that night kind of got me some attention.
Right.
And then all the coaches back then, all the college coaches come to the game. So then they start writing you letters. And then before you know it, you had these boxes of letters from Big East schools. And it was like, ooh, this is pretty cool. This is happening.
So that your sophomore season, you started to get those letters.
My sophomore year,
Wow.
letters were coming in, and they were generic letters. Hey Chuck, my name is whoever.
Yeah.
We're excited to monitor your progression and your progress. Go Friars, Providence. Go St. John's or Villanova. So that,
not necessarily offers of
No,
but like we'll have an eye
we're
on
watching
you.
you.
Got
And
it.
really, it was a byproduct of. I was a byproduct of the league.
Yeah.
Because the league was so good on any given night. Rick Pitino, Lou Carnesecca, Ron Rutledge, Jay Wright was an assistant at the time. At any given night, they can come to watch someone else, but indirectly see me. So I was a byproduct of how good the league was and how
Right.
good the city was.
Right.
So I knew that, right? I knew, like, if I play well against Kenny, like, someone's going to say, he's not bad. Kenny
Right.
was super good,
Yeah.
but, man, Chuck got 15
He
in
was
that
holding
game.
his own.
He
Right.
was okay.
Right.
So that allowed me to kind of say, all right, maybe I'm not Kenny Anderson, which I wasn't,
Right.
but maybe he could play Division I somewhere.
Right.
And that's what the Catholic League and that's what really New York City back then did for guys like me. The competition was so high level that you always had opportunities.
be
And if
seen.
you were Kenny Anderson, you had an opportunity to prove to everybody that I'm number one.
Right.
Because I'm going to go dominate Talentine.
Right.
And if you don't believe that I'm the deal, I'm going to go dominate Christ the King.
Right.
So whoever the best team was, I'm going to go to New Jersey, I'm going to dominate St. Anthony's and Bob Hurley. So, like, the opportunities were there for everybody.
Right.
If you were supposed to be number one, you can prove that you were number one.
Right.
If you were a guy that may be a borderline Division I guy, you can prove, no, I'm a Division I guy because the opportunities were there.
How would you describe yourself as a player? Like, were you an attacker and
I was one of those guys, like a hybrid guy. Like, if I needed to handle the ball on that particular night, I can handle it. Early on, I was more of a slasher. Like my freshman year, Eddie Rivera, Darryl Reed, they did most of the ball handling. And I was just clever enough or shifty enough to kind of, maneuver my way to the basket.
Right.
So I was more of a slasher like my freshman and sophomore year. And then as I start to understand the game and say, okay, I'm not going to be able to get to the rim against Malik Sealy every night. Rest in
Right.
peace. I'm not going. I
Yeah,
can't get
rest
to
in
him. He's
peace.
just too big.
Yeah.
I can't get around Brian Reese. The guy's got a 40-inch vertical
Yeah.
leap. So now I got to figure out how to shoot the Jimmy. And then
Right.
I started to get better with the jump shot. And then I started to gain confidence in my jump shot. And then I can hear the people giving me feedback. Yo, that kid can shoot it. And that kind of encouraged me. And then I learned how to play off my jump shot, shot fake, one dribble pull up. And then I was able to kind of formulate my game that way.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy for me because at that time there was so much talent, but you were still developing your game,
Yeah.
kind of adjusting it. And I don't know, for some reason, because we don't see it today anymore, like that huge conglomerate of talent all mixed in one.
Yes.
My thing is how were you ever intimidated? Or were you always confident, like, I got this, I don't care. Kenny's superstar, this guy's or you ever like, yo, son, what am I doing here? Am I like, should I be? You know what I mean? Because I'm listening to the story and I'm like, yo, you went, yo, Malik, oh my God,
Yeah.
like, what were you like? what
No,
was-
you know why? Because the times were different back then.
Okay.
So like there was no real separation in the '80s, and what I love telling this part of my journey. Back then, right, when you were in the '80s, you went to the playground. There was no adult to tell anyone the 15-year-olds are going to play with the 15-year-olds. The 16-year-olds are going to play with the 16-year-olds.
Right.
It was like, if you're good enough and you got enough courage, yo, I got next.
Right.
And then when you called next, you had to deal with, there was always like a 21-year-old hood that could hoop, but he's a hood.
Right.
Right.
And you had to
So
tell
he's looking
him.
for the smoke.
Yeah, and you had to tell, yes. And you had to tell him, like, I don't have you. I'm not picking you. And that, yeah, and that, so nowadays, kids don't understand that dynamic. They don't understand how to interact with people. They don't know how to manipulate or move and shift. So back then, I'm 14 years old. I grew up in the South Bronx, and there's like 4 of us who were 15 to 16 and thin and skinny like me. And then there's like 3 grown men. One just got out of jail. He can hoop. He can play.
Right.
And his team lost, and he's pissed, and he wants to play again.
Right.
So he automatically thinks, he's like, yo, man, I'm on. And then, I'm looking at him. I'm like, I got next, man.
Bro.
I've been waiting for 30 minutes. And then in your mind, you're like, oh, bro.
Here we go.
How am I going to do this? So, but you learned, right?
Right.
You learned how to, like, tell this guy, like, no, man, I'm not going nowhere.
Right.
And then that guy said, man, I'm on this court. I'm going to slap you. I'm going to do this.
Right.
But you figured out how to survive it. So when you figured that out, like playing against Kenny Anderson or Malik, it was a different mindset. I wasn't afraid of them. I clearly respected them.
For sure.
Yeah.
But there was no fear because I just survived my neighborhood.
That's what's,
And there's a guy who's locked up
I want to give it
who
up for
says, I'm going
love
to
it.
slap you if you don't put me on the team.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
love
damn,
it.
I got to put this guy on the team.
And you maneuvered.
And I
love that.
maneuvered enough to make him feel like this little skinny dude is not a fighter. Everybody in the neighborhood knows he's not a troublemaker.
Right.
But he's just tough enough. If you push him in the corner, he may hit back.
He might get you a few
Right.
times.
You know what? And then after a while, those guys are like, I respect Shorty, man. Yo,
Right,
man,
he's
you got
good.
next.
Right.
Good. And then I'd be like, oh, man, thank God. I did not want to fight that guy.
I tell my daughter's 12, my oldest is 12. I tell her all the time, I'm like, yo, y'all don't understand what book smarts are compared to street smarts.
Yeah.
Like, people understand those terms,
Right.
but applying them,
Yeah.
she don't get it.
Yes.
Because I like your example right now is a perfect rationale. Because like you gotta be able to predict how you're gonna move, when you're gonna move,
That's right.
who you're gonna try to punk, how you're gonna address somebody.
That's right.
Looking behind your back, like all these things, you gotta have that second nature.
No question.
She does not have a clue about
Yes.
it, and obviously the times are different. We live in a very different environment
No
than the
question.
Bronx
Right.
now, thankfully. But like, part of me is always like regretting the fact that I can't give her that Bronx element.
Yeah.
Because we can't. You were talking to Sturgis about it earlier,
Yeah.
but it's you kind of want them to be involved in that a little
Yeah.
bit, just so they can understand
Yeah.
how to deal with those situations.
No question.
Because it's vital, and I'm sure that's played out very well for you throughout your career.
No, it's allowed me to succeed. It's allowed me to have success on and off the court, and because I've been able to, thank God, grow up in that neighborhood and be able to manage personalities. Because if you've got necks, you figure out like there's 2 guys on the court who lost, both of them are hoods, but one rocks with me, one likes me, and that one happens to be tougher than that one.
Right.
So I'm gonna rock with him, and if that guy gets loud, he gonna say, "Yo, Shorty's my guy, back away."
Right.
So I was able to figure that out and say, I'm gonna rock with Jay. Jay's gonna protect me, and without the embarrassment of like, "Oh, Chuck, you got punked." It's like, what? The other guy didn't say nothing to me.
Right.
Like, he didn't say nothing because he knows
Jay's with you.
me, and I knew that.
Right.
So, but
It's chess, man.
It's chess. It's chess. And really, there was no one there to say, the guys who weigh 90 pounds, you play on this.
Play with the 90 pounds.
It was like 90-pound guys with guys who just got out of Rikers. They were like,
Good luck.
Good luck. You got to survive it, man. Like,
Yo, I love that story because it's so real. Like, we grew up, having necks and, having people try. Like, everything you went
Yeah.
through, I'm like, damn, that was me at 12, 13, us at 12, 13,
Yeah.
14. And, even then I had to learn. I learned to be tough in the court because
Right.
I was like, listen, man, I wasn't looking for the fight, but
Right.
I'm not, all right, man, I guess you're going to have to.
That's right.
You're 21, I'm 16. You're going to feel me today, though.
No, that's right. That's right.
You might get your face scratched,
Yeah, that's right.
but it's going to be one hell of a scratch, though.
Figure it out.
You're going to be like, damn, I should have never fought this guy. Now my girl gonna think whatever.
that's funny.
But anyway, I just wanted to like reinforce, like, it's so dope because, like I said, the whole being intimidated factor.
Yeah.
And something that kids it's not even about the hood. It's just in general. Like, everyone's stuck on social media.
Yeah.
We're ultra sensitive in society.
Yeah.
You grew up now in a world where you had to like courage your way through, kind of audacity your way through.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I'm here.
yeah.
How is it now I'm on fast forwarding as far as the coaching thing, but is it completely different in terms of what you're seeing, what you're coaching versus what you are, and what you've experienced as a youth yourself?
Yeah, it's different because, back then there was an immediate, at times, dangerous reaction back to you.
Back then.
Back then.
Right.
So like if you weren't careful and you really got loud with a guy, and that guy was a real killer, like you get hurt.
You get your box rocked.
He ain't talking to him.
Rocked.
He gonna knock you
so
out.
this is not social media when you know, I'm not gonna follow you.
Yo, everybody needs to hear this, yo.
Yeah, this is not social media where you said I'm not
This
gonna
got to
follow
be the clip
you,
we use right here.
and I'm gonna put an emoji that I'm mad at you, and call you punk, and then you send me back a bad emoji back to me. That wasn't that. It was like if you made a bad decision on the court, and the guy that just got out of Rikers and you try to fake it like you're a tough guy, you could get hurt.
Yeah, and they know that easy. They know fake
that.
Yeah, so you knew, like, okay, the thing I thought back then was you were honest.
Right.
You were always honest with yourself. And you're like, okay, I can't mess with that guy.
Right.
That guy's a real killer. He don't want to hurt you, but if you hit him, Chuck, he's not going to hit you back. He's going to put you down.
Right.
So you knew that. In today's day and age, I think, because they don't, it's not really their fault because of technology. They don't get a chance to interact, and they don't get a chance to develop those skills, those social skills.
Right.
So they think that they can just send an emoji and say, you know, hey, I'm tougher than you. And then ironically, that guy sends a meaner emoji.
Right.
And then no one gets hurt.
Right.
So then it encourages
cyber thugging.
Yeah. So it encourages the behavior of, like, I can say and do what I want without any ramifications.
Right.
Where back then, if you said something that was out of pocket, you were going to get slapped.
Right.
Yeah, you got to live with that.
And the neighborhood just kind of knew, like, yo, Chuck, you are out of line.
Right.
That dude right there is a big dude, and he's a street dude. And everyone in our neighborhood knows he's a street dude, and you knew too. And you reacted, you shouldn't have done that.
Right.
And that was your lesson at that point. You came home with a black eye, like, I know this is embarrassing, but I know not to mess with that guy anymore.
You learn.
And you learn quickly. But today, that lack of interaction or that lack of holding you accountable.
Accountability.
You say something, I just say something meaner
Right.
on Instagram, and it's like, okay, we're even. You know?
You said something earlier that I wanted to make sure we got back to. So in your day, and I'd argue probably maybe even into like the early 2000s, New York was still a hotbed for basketball.
Big time.
Right?
Big time.
You still had a good amount of folks that stayed local, went through the high school process, etc. And then you saw this huge mass exodus, right?
Yes.
Now prep schools dominate.
Yes.
You know, we as New Yorkers rarely ever know that a product from New York is playing or you know is a standout somewhere. You got to dig through a whole bunch of information. Versus before, it was very cut and dry. It was like this kid from this neighborhood, in this section of New York, this is who he is.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you prep schools? I get right, but something was lacking here locally in the high school environment that allowed prep schools to come in. What do you think that was?
I think for a long time in New York City, whether it was the public school or the Catholic League, there was consistency with the coach.
Okay.
Whether you liked him or didn't like him, you agreed with his basketball philosophy or disagreed, he was the coach, and he had been the coach for 20 years. So if you were looking for this style of play, then that kid would probably gravitate to that program. If you were looking for this style of play, then he would gravitate to that program. And then, you know, those coaches got older, and then they retired. And what happened was those coaches had again, whether you agree or disagree, they had a way of doing things, and everyone else around them respected that. They're like, don't mess with the coach at O'Hallows. Right. Because this guy's going to fight back. Don't mess with Gary DeCesar, right? Because Gary's going to bite back. Right. You agree, disagree. It was just kind of like set in stone. When those guys got older and they retired, a new crop of young guys came in to coach those programs. And some of those programs were like iconic, legendary programs. And when that happened, all the outside influences said, this is the time to jump. This is the time to get in there. So like no one would really mess with Gary because Gary was willing to fight. Yeah. So you weren't going to come in and take a kid from here and put him at a prep school unless Gary was like, you know what, he needs that academically. It's better for him. But the days of like coming in and saying, I'm going to take that kid from St. Raymond's when Gary was here, not happening ever, because he was going to war. Coach Murray at Cardinal Hayes, he was going to war. Coach Carey at O'Hallows, going to war. Talentine, going to war. Like, you were not coming in New York City trying to move guys. But when those guys got older and they started to retire and move on, they were a bunch of young guys who were good coaches, but they weren't established yet. And for those 15 to 25 months, there was a window of vulnerability. And during that window, everyone on the outside says, we can grab that kid.
Swarmed in.
We can pull him out. We can influence. We can convince mom and dad that their son is better off here. And then once one kid left, another kid followed. The problem, one of the challenges was that when one kid left a program and someone poached him from that coach, in my opinion, the other coaches in the city did not fight for that coach because they felt like that's your problem.
Yeah, you got punked.
You got punked.
Whatever.
My argument was to all of those guys was, you could be next and you're going to be next. It's not going to happen maybe today, but in 2 years. So I think I was right. So slowly there's a deterioration of the Catholic League, the PSAL, and New York City basketball. Because, you know, we're a band of brothers.
Yeah.
But if you let Chuck get punked, then they say, you know what, you can punk him too.
Yeah, this guy's
him.
next. Yeah.
So that kind of happened in New York.
Wow.
And no one really stood up for each other. So then what happened is they don't see it. It's a gradual deterioration. All St. Raymond's maybe not as good anymore. Well, guess what? Ohio's is dropping. Christ the King is dropping. And really because they're taking the players.
Right.
And they didn't defend each other. They didn't rally around each other.
Wow.
And so the outside forces said, like, you know what? You can infiltrate New York City because no one's going to fight for each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You just like laid out some like Game of Thrones logic.
Oh,
right?
I know.
It's literally that. It's almost like war tactic. It's like, all right, you find the weakest area and you go exploit that, and then everything else should fall.
When I was growing up, and the coaches that I mentioned, Mo Hicks at Rice, right? He was tremendous. So like Mo Hicks, you know, Rice St. Raymond's rivalry, hated each other. But when it was time to rally around New York City basketball, all the coaches kind of put their differences aside. And really, like most of us, right, it's self-serving.
Sure.
Like, man, I don't want that to happen to Gary because that can happen to me.
Right.
I don't really like him, and he don't like me, but I got to defend him.
It's a greater good here we're talking about.
We got to stay connected.
Right.
We can't allow people from the outside to come in and take our guys.
Right.
And then when Mo moved on and Gary moved on and all these other guys moved on, you could see it happening, and no one was willing to defend their brother. And then really New York City basketball just kind of.
I just feel like there's a correlation between what you just spoke of and the differences when you were growing up, as far as, you know, like there was a level of integrity, even in the mass hysteria. You know what I mean? Like, yo, like let's respect. Like I'll just take you for example.
Right.
You stood up to the big bully of the block at a ballpark. Let's say.
Right.
There's a level of respect there.
I did pray though. I said,
but what I'm saying is in the hoopla, another person was like, oh well, I'll just knock. You know, like like he's standing his ground though. Let's at least give him that, even though I'm not gonna let my guard down here because then I'm gonna look like a punk too.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that there's an embedded, I don't know if it's good character or integrity about the coaches when you speak of them in that light, because we often spoke on this podcast of like why New York City basketball is kind of deteriorated in that sense. Often we brought it up many a times, and like my brother said, you brought up like a Game of Thrones kind of blueprint as to the reason for it. And I wonder if there's a correlation between the type of people we're dealing with back then, from your era, let's say, and the differences.
You know what? The people today are not bad people.
Right.
You know, they're good people, good coaches. I think what's changed, and one of the things that's changed is entrepreneurship, I guess, if for lack of a better term. You know, back then you just kind of sat back and you were invited to these camps, and you were invited to these high-level elite camps. And what happened was people started to learn. They're watching quietly. There's a young 15-year-old who maybe is not a good basketball player, but he wants to be a coach, and he's watching. And he's saying, okay, that's how you do it? That's how you assemble a team?
Right.
That's how you go to Nike? That's how you talk to Adidas? That's how you go to Under Armour? So he's listening, like, how do you formulate a contract? Oh, okay, cool. You can have an AAU team. So prior to that, you just took everyone's word for it.
Right.
Like, hey man, listen to me. This is how. Follow my lead.
Right.
And
I'm established. I've done this before. So
what happened was, as time went on, those young guys, they're watching, they're looking carefully, and they're saying, "Ooh, I can do this better." I love the way Riverside, the Gauchos did it. I can take this nationally. I'm gonna have my own AAU team, and I'm gonna go travel to California, and then before you know it, the Gauchos, Riverside, they're going not only to California, they're going to France.
They're going
They're going to Italy. They're going over the world. So these young guys, and again, that's not a bad thing, but then every time someone made a chess move, to your point, someone else is watching too, and they say, ooh, I can do that too, and I can do that better.
Right.
And then before you know it, with technology, social media, and access to technology, we don't need a studio. Your studio is your imagination. The studio is a classroom. The studio is wherever you want it to be. It could be on a street corner.
Yep.
As long as you have the product. And I think what people start to realize is I'm the product. Mm-hmm. I don't need ABC News to interview me. I'm the product.
Mm-hmm.
I just roll the camera.
Right.
And then let's go. And then I think that became a good thing for a lot of people, but it also helped deteriorate the leagues in New York, because everybody indirectly, without any bad intentions, were trying to like do their own thing, and by doing
to the
their
detriment
own, of the greater good.
Whole, yeah.
Right. So, man, I like the Catholic League, but if I can do this, and I can, have 3 of your kids play with me, but it's going to hurt my program. Yeah, I know, but I can do this in Italy.
Right.
I'm gonna do this.
Right.
And I think that's part of it, and that's a credit to the people who were able to figure that out. But to your point, it was a detriment to the
Our
league
brand
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit, because it was no longer local.
Right.
It was like, hey, you can play in Italy, like I can go play in Italy.
Right.
You're from the Bronx.
Right.
It's like
that's super compelling.
Yeah,
I want that.
Yeah, I want to play. When the Gauchos played the Russians in the Gaucho gym, that was like mind blowing, right? It was like you couldn't comprehend it. It was like, the who? It's like, no, they're playing the Russian national team.
Yeah.
17 and under. So someone's watching that, and someone's saying, ooh, we can do that too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to you guys, say, play with me. Well, I already play with a team. We play in Dykeman. We play here. I'm like, no, we're going to Russia.
Right.
And it's like, ooh, that's different.
Yeah, I'm in.
I'm in.
Right.
So when that was one of those moments, and I know I'm jumping around, when the Gauchos played
fine.
the Russian national team, it was like, oh, this is global. And they're playing them right in the Bronx.
Right.
And it's like on TV, it's on ABC News, like there's Russians in the Bronx. So people are saying, we can return the favor. And then not only can we play in Russia, we can play in Brazil, we can go all over, and then we can collaborate with the sneaker companies and say, we're going to wear your product, and our young 15-year-old who's going to be in your league or in the NBA, he's gonna wear your product for 5 years without you having to pay him.
Right.
And then that thing just exploded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing I was going to say was there's another, like, I'm not exactly sure if there's like a parallel. When it comes to the idea of Russia playing here in the Bronx, right, at that time, was there some sort of like damn, I'm like lost right now. I'm sorry. I'm lost.
You blank?
Yeah.
Well, when you come back to it,
it's gonna be a bloopers reel, right?
So I wanted to take it. So you mentioned, we were talking about how New York City's talent pool seems to be less than back in those days.
Well, they're just not playing here.
Right, locally. When you look, is there hope for there to be kind of a renaissance almost in that regard? So, because again, I tout this as the mecca of basketball podcasts. That's how I tout it intentionally, because I'm trying to relive those mecca of basketball days of New York, right?
No question.
And I feel, and I go to St. Raymond games, I'll go to CHSAA games.
Right.
The talent is there.
Yeah.
There's some studs playing still.
No question.
Not to the 4 or 5, 2, 3 players that are league bound.
Right.
But they can ball.
There's talent, no doubt.
So my hope, I'm seeing the talent. It seems like there is a possibility, but nationally speaking, how does that compare to New York City talent? You that are a coach now, that's observing talent everywhere.
Yeah, no, the talent, like the New York City talent is really, really good. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that they're not playing here. So what you do is they're sprinkled all over the country. So now DC, I'm using DC as an example, but it could be Virginia. They're taking credit for teams that are dominant, but 3 of their kids are New York City kids.
Right.
So it's like, man, did you watch Oak Hill? Man, Oak Hill's awesome. Yeah, I know. They got Cole Anthony
from
New York City, right? So it's like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's taking place, and So the talent in New York is still great. They're just not consistently staying home and playing here, and they're giving other cities and other states and other programs the credibility. But if those kids chose to stay home, it would come back. It would be the renaissance of this resurgence of New York City basketball. And I think this is why I was excited when you and I initially talked about this, because it's cool to kind of share these stories with some of the younger guys to kind of let them know, like, New York City basketball was awesome. And it still is, but there was a time I just watched Felipe Lopez, Dominican Dream. Like, they show footage of St. Raymond's and Rice. Yeah. Like, I told my son, I said, watch this documentary, because, you always talk about New York City basketball.
Right.
And I sound like the old guy.
It's funny because they look at you crazy, right?
They look at me crazy.
Come on, man. Stop playing.
Yeah. So I said, look at the documentary so you can see there's an energy. They were grown men who worked down in New York City in Manhattan, who had shirt and tie, and when they walked through the door, they put on a Rice jersey on. And then, like, this guy's married. He's got kids. And then there's another guy who's married with kids. He would walk in, and he put on St. Raymond's jersey. And you're like, what are you doing? You're 35. But there was a pride of being an alumni from St. Raymond's, and they're rooting for Kareem Reed or Julius Hodge, and the other guys are rooting for Felipe. And that was awesome. So I think what you guys are doing, kind of telling these stories, creates an excitement. It creates an energy, and then more importantly, what you do is you connect my little journey with this other guy's little journey, with this other guy's little journey, and before you know it, you got a string of history. Oh, yes. And then now it's like, ooh, okay, man, that's pretty cool. Yes. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I think that's something that's been connected. Like, the idea earlier when you were talking about, like, gauchos and stuff, we've had people, every single person that's come on has some way, shape, or form connected. Like, you're telling stories of reason. Like, we were debating, why has New York City basketball fallen and all that. You're giving us the literal answers. And I wanted to say something about earlier. This was what I forgot to say earlier. Right. Every coach wants to win. We're talking high school now.
Correct. Right?
And it's got to feel like, okay, if you get poached, like you said, you want to win. Even though, you're my brotherhood, blah, 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 I want to win. Because at the end of the day, I'm on the newspaper, probably better recruitment, etc.
Yeah.
The whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
So I think that speaks even more volumes of the character of people that we had. And again, I don't know what the heck that is. Yeah. What is that about? Because to be poached and to say, wait, I'm going to fight for my brother here. Right. And I ain't going down. I don't think that that generation that came after could see the bigger picture as in terms of we all win or we all lose. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like because I'm going to be honest with you, hearing the story now, I couldn't have known, looking back, fight for your other brother at that moment. Like, fight for your fellow coach. Yeah. I wouldn't have known because, again, the idea is to win. Yeah. You know what I mean? By any means. Yeah. And then the last thing I want to bring up is when it comes to the Oak Hill thing with Carmelo Anthony. Right.
Cole Anthony.
Sorry. Right. When I look at all these high schools.
I think Melo one did too, right?
Yeah. Melo did go, yeah. But when I say that, I look at Oak Hill, they're on ESPN, for example, right? Yeah. And if you think about it, I look at that like Alabama in college football. Yeah. There are, and then you got Duke and North Carolina, and not to, shout out to the Gamecocks, but you know what I'm saying, where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is there's some known commodities, enterprises in these sports, right, that are just globally known that if a player gets on there, his chances of going pro are significantly increased. Right. I wonder if that has more to do with the idea of just turning pro as opposed to giving the credit where it's due as far as our own backyard in New York City. Like they have a feeling like, if I go to Oak Hill, I'm going to be seen nationally, so I'll go to the next big college, et cetera, et cetera.
I think today it's grown into that because I'm good friends with Steve Smith, the head coach who's been there forever. Mm-hmm. He does an unbelievable job. So that program, like any other program, it's evolved, right? Sure. It's become like this national, global. It's a who's who's played there. Right. But I think the initial intentions of, because have you guys been to Oak Hill?
Never.
It's like
it's like Disneyland for basketball.
No, it's it's in a really good way. So Steve watches this. It's like in a small little town. Right. There's nothing around it. Wow. There's a gas station. It's
one
that
stoplight town.
Yeah, it's that image that you have, right? Yeah. So it's not a fancy gym. It's a small little gym. And really, I share that because I think when Steve and those guys first got the program going, it was really to help kids. We got a small little program in a small little town. I want to coach, meaning Steve. I want to be a coach. And all of a sudden, there's a kid from New York or Detroit or inner city who, man, he's got issues with his parents or academically or whatever. And this is a great way to kind of, let's help this kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pull him out of a tough situation, tough environment, and let's isolate him here where he can focus in on academics and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was they became successful because the word got out and said, hey, man, Steve and those guys really helped that kid. That kid would not have made it because he comes from a tough environment. There's substance abuse in his family. He's learning disabled, whatever the issue was. Right. The intentions were, I don't think at the time, was to become a powerhouse.
Got it.
It was like, we like to play basketball. We like to coach basketball. And if you happen to have a kid who we can help, bring them. Right. And then they did right by those kids. And at the same time, every time they did right, they gained more credibility.
The multiplied effect.
So here's another kid. And then every year the kid got better and bigger and stronger. And now you're starting to have pros. And then so I think today Oak Hill is different than it was when it first started. I think they, like any other school, the mission was, let's educate, let's help, let's give these kids an opportunity. And I think the mission is still the same today, but there's more pop to it.
The notoriety is just
crazy.
crazy.
It's crazy. It took off.
Damn, I really wanted to hate them. Now I can't hate them.
You can't hate them.
Was that, I'm wondering right now, I've never seen a high school with that kind of like magnitude in terms of national scale. Like, we've heard of St. Raymond, we heard of our own local, but like
not on a national
ESPN,
level.
like. Have you ever? I can't.
Well, now you hear about more, but back then I think that was the more dominant one.
I don't ever remember saying.
But to our point of this conversation is, there was a huge turnover in New York City basketball with the coaches. Well, Steve Smith's been there over 30 years.
Wow.
So there's a consistency.
I get it.
Now,
that makes a lot of sense.
No one's gonna poach his guys.
No one's
gonna pick on him because he's established. He's done right by guys. So every time you do right by them, they go back to the community and say, yo, Steve's my guy.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's no turnover at Oak Hill. Right. He's been there for 30 years, so he's established, and so now the program evolves.
Right.
It grows, and no one messes with it.
I'm going to tell you something. I think for everyone listening, I think we just sold Oak Hill even more. If they had any credibility, they got it more. So
I say Oak Hill, but the other prep schools too.
It
not just Oak Hill, the other program.
It backfired for New York City, but we got more work to do, y'all. I'm sorry.
No, but check this out. You said something earlier at the very beginning that I think resonates very much here as far as how we can potentially get this back here, or at least make it pop more than it has, right? So like you mentioned, the talent, the kids coming out of New York are still there's a lot of talent. They're just being spread out all over. If a few of those big dogs got together and said, yo, we're going to go rain down, or 4 of them, 2 of them went to one school, another school, that could be the seeds that start this whole thing over again. It's kind of like, the big 3 when LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh got together. You group up like that,
right?
There's no telling how crazy. And again, going back to the Felipe Lopez thing, Felipe was the king of New York that day, right?
That's right.
That means a lot. For you to be a high school kid, being on top of the world, like, bro, we're not talking about you're the king of Rahway, New Jersey, or a small town somewhere. Like, you're the king of the biggest city, the capital of the world.
Right.
If you can do that again, even if you are a bust elsewhere, that is a legacy.
No question.
And so to me, it's like, yo, let's bring that back. Parents, don't go for the easy money, man. Let's try to figure something out.
Right.
And you don't have to, like, if it's necessary for you to go to one of these prep schools for whatever the issue is.
No, there's legitimate reasons for it. Of course.
But there's not you don't have to. You can achieve getting recruited at a very high level from some of the best programs in the country right here.
You heard it here from South Carolina assistant coach.
Absolutely, You can do it. Like the coaches and the universities are going to follow the talent. So if the talent stays here at St. Raymond's or Christ the King or any of the local schools, then we're going to come here.
Yeah.
You don't. The thing that people I think have a tendency to forget is, like, you're the product.
People come to you.
You're the one that creates the hysteria, the fanfare. It's you. It's not necessarily the jersey.
Right, but I think a couple things. Like I said earlier, they're on ESPN.
Yeah.
Speaking of Oak Hill, there's a lot already that's in their favor.
Correct.
And if you're Joe Schmo who's feeling himself right now,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I just seen Melo in Oak Hill. I could be Melo. I'm better than Melo.
Yes.
I'm better than Melo. I'm taking my ass to Oak Hill.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you.
I'm gonna show you
that I'm better than Melo. Not only that,
Right.
I see you on ESPN the next year.
Yeah. Hey, look,
I'll be on Sports Center.
that's
You know what I
the
mean?
thought yeah.
It's hard to. What I'm saying is, in all seriousness, it's tough to compete with that.
Yes.
We're talking about a huge enterprise right here.
Yeah.
Versus and then add to that the lack of consistency with the New York market in terms of coaches.
Yes.
And, you know, like you said, comparing 30 years to people, the turnover is great. Like every day.
Yeah.
There's no continuity building, and on top of that, are we a brotherhood of collective coaches where we
Right.
got each other's back? Is
Right.
that there? I don't even know. Like, we got to do an interview with more coaches to see
Yeah.
if that's even
It's,
true.
you know, I think it could be. I think one of the things you can do or try to do when you're trying to, you know, bring back that New York City basketball, go play to Oak Hill. Try to schedule Oak Hill. Now, granted, you know,
That's a dope idea.
they may be loaded and,
Yeah,
and,
they
and
might have
maybe
too much
it may
going
be a
on.
tough
And they
challenge.
will. They will
But
be.
what happens is, you know, if you can figure out a way to just say, hey, I'm going to play Oak Hill every year on national TV, eventually what happens is I'm going to catch up because it's about opportunity. It's going back to the 80s. Like St. Raymond's caught up to everybody because you gave me an opportunity. So
That's
I
right.
lose to Talentine, I lose to Christ the King, I lose to whoever.
Right.
But you keep giving me an opportunity, I figure you out.
I'm getting
I love
better.
And
that.
then here comes St. Raymond's. And then all of a sudden
Yo.
you bypass everybody. So in order to do it, you know, we may not be as deep or as big or as strong as Oak Hill, but play them. And then
You start figuring it
You
out.
start figuring it out, and then you get the exposure, you get the notoriety. And then there's going to be a kid at St. Raymond's or Christ the King or one of the local New York City teams that the rest of the country's going to say, that kid's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I know the guys at Oak Hill are really good, but that guy's not bad.
Yeah.
And then here it comes, you know.
That just means next year, St. Raymond is playing Oak Hill, baby, on ESPN. You heard it here first.
You hear that, Coach Lowe?
Yo,
Low,
Lopez.
done
Yo, and guy, I need some tickets. Two tickets, Lopez.
Oh, that's funny.
You know how I go?
Low, done deal. These guys forced me to say that.
Yo, that's it,
I don't
baby.
want to put any pressure on you.
That's right, ESPN.
Blame these guys.
That's
not
right.
me.
I'll take all the play. Just give me the tickets too.
That's funny.
So you're at South Carolina.
Yep.
You're a Gamecock assistant coach. Is it just coincidence that Frank Martin and Chuck Martin are on the bench together?
You know, I got lucky. You know, I've known Frank for a long time.
And you're both Latino? I know he's
yeah,
Cuban.
Yeah, we got a Cuban and a
But-
Puerto Rican in South
Right.
Carolina.
Yo.
There's got to be a
Oh,
knock-knock joke somewhere.
Yeah, there is. There is. Knock, knock. What can you find in South Carolina that you can't find everywhere else? Oh, Puerto Rican and a Cuban. So, no, Frank and I have known each other for 20 years, man.
Wow.
And we were one of the few, the only two at the time, I think, like Latinos in Division I basketball.
Right.
He was at Northeastern at the time, and I was at Manhattan College.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we met. So ironically, we have the same name, but most of the world knows us by different names. Most of the world knows Frank by Frank Martin.
Right.
Oh,
But
okay.
really, his name is Francisco Jose Martin.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Most people know me by Chuck Martin, but
And
really
you're
my
Jose.
name is Jose Luis Martin.
Right.
So we got the same name, but the
Wow.
world views us as Chuck and Frank, but
Right.
really we're Jose Martin.
Right.
So there's
That's
a
crazy.
crazy story there. But Frank
Wow.
and I have known each other forever, and we created this bond because we were one of the few guys in the business. And it's not like we hung out every day, but when we saw each other on the road, you acknowledged each
love,
other.
yeah.
And then you would root for him, right? Like as his career moved on, you root for him, and I felt like he kind of rooted for me. And then you fast forward 20 years, he has an incredible run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Right.
Goes to the Final Four. He's one possession away from playing for the national championship.
Right.
And I'm at a restaurant rooting for him. And then, the game's over, they lose, but they had an incredible run. And then not knowing 2 weeks later, his assistant takes a head coaching job. And then a mutual friend of ours, we're both talking to him. I'm speaking to him on the phone, and Frank's calling him. But he's not clicking over.
Right.
And so Frank texts him like, yo, what are you doing? Like, yo, bro, I've been calling you all day. You're not going to call me back? And the guy, our mutual friend, says, all right, give me a second. So he clicks over. He says, well, I've been calling you. Why aren't you picking up the phone? He says, I'm on the phone with Chuck Martin. And I think at that moment, the light went off in Frank's head. Like, Chuck from New York? He says, yeah. I said, what's he doing? Because he was so caught up in the Final Four run. He didn't realize that we got let go at Indiana. He says, I'm talking to Chuck. They just got let go. He says, give me his number. That's kind of how it.
Wow.
That's kind of
This was happening right after. No, you said 2 weeks later. That phone call happened 2 weeks later.
Yeah, but like 10 days after the Final Four.
Yeah.
I'm
But
watching
still in the thick of it.
I'm watching TMZ to see the gossip. So I'm on the couch, and a mutual friend calls, "Yo, what's up? What's going on? Hey, a few people have inquired about you." But I was still okay with Indiana for a year.
Okay.
So that kind of alleviated some pressure off of me to like hit the ground, run, and try to find something. I had the luxury, thank God, to kind of take my time.
Severance to figure it out.
So I'm at home. I'm watching TMZ and like, you know what? Let me disconnect from basketball for like just chill and just be a regular guy. And then Frank calls. He's like, Chuck, what are you doing? I remember saying to him, I'm sitting in my couch watching TMZ. We started laughing. He's like, yo, come down, man. Come down to South Carolina. Come see it. See if you want to do this. And then I came down. It was great. The weather was awesome. Palm trees. They just went to the Final Four.
Right.
I know Frank's a good coach. I can learn a lot, and there's chemistry.
What's that vacation area down there?
They got Hilton Head. They got Myrtle Beach.
Hilton Head. You guys are right there, right?
Yeah, like an hour and 15, hour and 20.
I drove by there.
Yeah.
The
campus Masters,
is dope. Yeah.
Golf. I mean, it's an incredible place, South Carolina. And ironically, tons of New Yorkers live down in South Carolina.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Because it's quality of life, property.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go down to Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, which is tremendous. A bunch of New Yorkers who did well up here financially, moved down there, opened up restaurants, bars, and they're just
made their money stretch down there.
Yeah, you could feel it. You could feel the New York vibe down there.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a question because I don't have any real experience in South Carolina.
Yeah.
But I did drive the Carolinas with my uncle once when I was a kid. We had an ordeal at a gas station in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay. My uncle goes in to get gas.
Right.
I see the gentleman pull a shotgun, put it behind himself.
Right.
I look over there. I said, we're going to die.
Right.
This is it. This North Carolina is over.
Right.
We just got stopped by police
State trooper.
like 30 miles ago.
Right.
Like this is not going well. So North Carolina.
Not a good trip.
and then on top of that, if that's not enough for me, I was already petrified. We're the only people that look like us.
Right.
Anywhere in sight.
Right.
And already that's the rate 3 strikes in a lot of places. I wonder, because of my naivete at this moment in time, did you experience anything of that nature of what I speak of, as far as being a Latino and being the only one that looks like you in a space?
Yeah.
Is that more prevalent? Because I know New York City, we're mixed. So New York is not like any other place. So what do you feel like that when it comes to contrast?
No, you know what? For me, it's different because I see the world, I guess, through different lenses. Mm-hmm. So, like, I've moved around so much because of basketball. I've been able to live everywhere, right? I lived in New York metropolitan area, in Philadelphia, UMass, Memphis in the Mid-South, Indiana, the Midwest. Mm-hmm. So really what I've learned over the years is when you're coaching or you're playing, for the most part, you're insulated in a bubble. So what happens is you have a routine that has been consistent for 20 years.
I get it.
So it's like you wake up in the morning before I had kids and before there was Starbucks at the Café Bustelo.
Right.
But it was coffee. And then now Starbucks, so you do the same thing. You wake up, you go to Starbucks, and you go to office. Now you got kids. You drop the kids off, you go to Starbucks, you go to office.
Right.
So I'm really insulated, and most of my interaction are with other coaches or other people in the athletic department or part of the university, the community.
Yeah.
Right.
So very few times am I going outside of that lane because really I don't have no reason to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm not going to hey, the neighbors invite us to a party, and I'm like, ooh, that was scary. That's not really my lane, right?
Right.
So I don't interact with, I don't get the opportunity to interact outside of anything that has nothing to do with basketball.
Right.
Very few times. Now my wife, because she's a social butterfly and she's involved in the community, she'll pull me in that direction. But for the most part, if it's a party or a banquet or a dinner, it's always related to the university or the program. Right. Which essentially becomes a safe space.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and you're by and large, because you're affiliated and you have a prestigious position within the team, you're almost like a community hero.
Yeah, I don't know about hero, but you're certainly identified. Like they know who you are.
Right.
So
you can be modest. I'm not going to be modest for you.
No.
But
but I'm not a hero. But clearly I'm not a hero. But like you, it's it's almost learned behavior, right? It's like that's the coach,
right?
So when the coach is around, this is
how things go.
This is how things go.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting because I've always had this this philosophy or mindset about me. I always said, like, if I take the gear off and I jumped on a 4 train, which I normally do, I'm just a middle-aged Puerto Rican guy.
That's true.
That's all I am, And if you don't recognize me from maybe, that's Chuck from St. Raymond's or college, if I take the gear off, it's just like, that guy's just a Puerto Rican guy from the Bronx.
Right.
But when you put the gear on, it's like, that guy's a coach. That guy was in the Final Four. Like, this perception changes.
Funny.
So then the behavior towards you changes.
That's true.
Right.
So
100% right.
The assumption, for better or worse, is like, that's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But when you take it off, it's like, he could be a good guy.
He might be a murderer. He might have just came out of Rikers.
Yeah. So I always find that fascinating that, because I still jump on the subway. I don't want to lose my edge. I don't want to lose that connection with the city. And I love the reaction that I get from people, or lack of reaction that I get from people, by just being invisible. Take off the gear. Because when you have the gear on, you're not invisible anymore.
Right.
We're making
attention.
Yeah, we're making fun of it. You're not a superhero, but there's something about you.
There's something special there.
That's the assistant at South Carolina in Final Four. But when you take it off, you're just a 6'2", overweight Puerto Rican guy, right?
Damn.
It's like, who's this guy?
Lots of mofongo.
You don't look overweight to me, man.
I gotta get a shape, man. But you take the jersey off and you just become a very average guy.
Yeah, I understand.
So I like not having the jersey on to see what the reaction is. Like, who am I when you take this off?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do people view me? What's my place in the world other than I'm the coach?
It's a good level set for yourself, because you're so accustomed to being, looked at in one way. Yeah. That's actually a great exercise.
Yeah,
I wish more people in high positions would do that.
Yeah, I like doing it because it keeps you honest.
Right, exactly.
And I always talk about, I try to take inventory at the end of the year of who I am, because I think who you think you are and who you are to the world, for the most part, there's a huge gap. If there was a Dave Chappelle skit, it's like you think you're the guy, and when you leave the room, everyone laughs at you. Right. Like, that guy's whatever. Right. So you gotta gauge that. You gotta figure out, like, I need to find out how they view me and what they think of me without the title. Yeah. So the only way I could do that is by taking it off, and then just saying, hey, my name is Chuck, and what do you do? I'm a teacher. And then see how they respond to you. Because really, I am a teacher. I view myself that way.
For sure.
But if you tell them you're a teacher at the University of South Carolina, it changes.
Different.
Because there's a learned behavior of, this is how I should act with the coach.
Yep.
I got to say, I've never heard anything like that in my life, period.
Yeah.
Full stop.
I've never heard that.
I'm different that way.
No, because and then I'm glad. There's such a humility that speaks back to what you've been telling me about from the days that you played on the courts as a kid.
That.
And I think that shows that integrity that I spoke about. Yeah. No, thank you, because I think right now you're showing other people to, like, strip down your armor and kind of just be one of the guys for a second, just to show who you are, and how you affect the world.
I think that's really powerful. If you strip yourself of the logo, and you can still influence, and you can still have people gravitate to you without them knowing who you are.
Yeah.
It kind of lets you know, okay, this is how the world really, who you think you are is true. If you think that you're this powerful, strong influencer or decision maker, then take it off and see if people react to you that way.
Still rock that way.
They still rock with you.
But my whole thing is, like,
now you may get the answer you don't want.
The humble pie is coming.
Yeah, but it's good. You know where you stand.
Right.
But isn't it easier to hide behind the shield?
100%.
Yeah.
And for you, like, also add to that the ego, like, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
You can't fuck with me. You know what I'm saying? Cops stop me and they let me go.
That ain't true, but I'll play along with it.
Okay, well, maybe not South Carolina. But if you came and coached in New York, I'm sure we could pull some.
Yeah, I hope. All the police officers, give me a break.
I think St. John's needs to coach.
Do something wrong, help me.
So, Chuck, what can we expect from the Gamecocks this upcoming season? Like, what are you guys cooking up that you can share? I know something you can't, but
I think we're going to be really good, man. And what I mean by that is, I think we got some really good pieces in the program that are good enough physically, mentally, emotionally. They have the capacity to perform at the highest level, because really the SEC is arguably the best league in the country.
No, for sure.
Years ago, it was like, Kentucky, Florida, maybe one other team that was rocking that year, and the rest of the team sucked.
Right.
But today, there's 5 coaches in that league who all coached in the Final Four. One won a national championship.
Wow.
Right.
Frank being one of them.
Right.
Frank being one of the coaches coaching the Final Four. So the league is like ridiculous. The level of talent that's coming into the league is ridiculous. So I think we have our own share of talent, and we're excited and proud of that. So I think we can make a run if we stay healthy. We can make a run in the NCAA tournament. I think we could be super competitive in the SEC, and we got a fun group that can get up and down.
Is Zion's little brother coming to South Carolina?
He is.
I don't even know if he has
Fake
a little
news.
brother. I don't even know if he has a little brother.
I was gonna say,
but he's from South Carolina,
what's going
right?
on here?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys missed, but it's not your fault.
Yeah, we tried.
That
We
guy, I'm
tried.
sure.
Yeah.
You had better.
Yeah, no, we
even if you
tried.
didn't, I want you to say that.
No, we did. We tried. We had a home visit.
And
with
John
him.
Morant too is from.
John Morant was I wasn't there yet, but he was an interesting story. He was a kid who was small town and didn't have the hype like Zion.
Yeah.
And at the time, South Carolina had P.J. Dozier, who's now with the Celtics.
Yes.
And Sindarius Thornwell, who's with the Clippers.
Okay.
And both of those guys were young. And this is the year before they went to the Final Four, but they won 25 games.
Right.
So you can see, like, this team's going to be good.
Right.
So, sometimes timing in life is not great. So I think the story goes that, Frank was all over John Morant, like loved him and hey, I want you. But I think at the time, if you're a high school kid, you're saying, well, where am I going to play? Like look at these guys. P.J. Dozier's pretty good, which he turned out to be really good.
Right.
And Sindarius wound up being player of the year. So if you're a 16, 17-year-old kid who's a junior in high school and you're saying, hey, come play with us, there's this sense of like, man, I don't know if I can actually do that there. So I think people see John today after 4 years or 3 years of building his confidence, having an opportunity to play, showcase his ability. So now he's ready to go. Now he's a star.
Right.
But 4 years ago, he's still trying to figure out,
Find his way.
Can I actually do this?
God.
And so the story goes that we wanted him, and I think he wanted to come, and he's looking around trying to figure out where can I go and play right away and maybe impact the program. And if you're him, what you saw was P.J. Dozier and Sindarius, and you're like, well, I'm not going to play with those guys. Those guys are potential pros, which they wound up being both NBA guys.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people nationally, when they hear he's from South, how did you not get him?
They don't get the details.
Yeah.
And so Frank clearly loved him and wanted him, and I think the kid was just like, he's still trying to figure it out, find his way.
I mean,
And it worked out great for him.
Yeah.
He's doing all right.
Just because I saw his run on the NCAA, I heard a little bit of his story, and some of the things he said was like his father was encouraging him to choose a team or an organization that he felt in his heart was like the right fit.
Yeah.
Because again, it's easy for a person to choose the Dukes of the world,
Sure,
North Carolina. I feel like every semi-decent kid wants to play on these teams,
Right, yeah.
which I'm a little sick of, to be honest. I'm
Right.
like, that's enough. Like,
Right.
back in the day, again, Mullen was in St. John's.
Right.
Georgetown had Ewing. Whatever happened to a little diversity. But whatever. LeBron puts everybody on one team, and here we got it.
Yeah, it's LeBron's fault.
It's LeBron's fault.
We're okay with that. Just come. Let's do it in South
Come to
Carolina.
South
They're doing South Carolina.
We'll take that. We'll take them all with us. We'll take them all with us.
But, at the end of the day, I'm not hating on it because the only difference is GMs back then, talking about the NBA now, they formed their super teams themselves.
Right,
And
right.
now the players are doing it.
Yeah,
so it is what it
absolutely.
is. It's a new day, no hate and all. At the end of the day, you want to enjoy what you're doing.
No doubt.
That's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Chuck, thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me. That was fun.
We didn't really talk about Monmouth, and I'm sorry that
There wasn't much to talk about there.
That's okay. That's okay.
I was just okay.
But we want to have you back
I wanna
at
do
some
it.
point because I know there's a ton, and every year that you're doing what you're doing, there's more stuff to share. So
I love
at some
to do
point when we get more big time, we'll fly you in.
No, you don't need to fly me.
All right,
in,
fine.
man. I
We'll
love to
Uber
do
you
it.
down.
No, I love to do it, man.
Nah,
This
man,
is
I'll
fun.
carry you. We'll each take a leg, and we'll
We'll walk
drag
you on in.
Okay, he's arrived.
But thank you, man.
No, this was awesome, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate
I'm
it.
serious.
you.
This was fun.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much,
it.
man.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much,
I
man.
love being back home, and a big shout out to my man Jim Sturgis.
Jimmy
Yeah,
Sturge.
Sturge in the
Yes,
house. He lost at least 50 pounds the last so. I don't know. Just throwing it out there, America.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dribbling Dimes. If you like what you heard, please leave a review or comment wherever you're listening to us now. Check us out on social media as well. We're live on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. On all platforms, you can find us at DRIBBLENDIMES.